Yeah, no, thanks very much, Peter. Yeah, I'm really, really pleased to be here, and it's a great honour to be asked to speak at the Putney debates, and I've been looking forward to it very much. What I want to do is to start a little bit along the same lines that we were, but I want to try and give some of the positives. I think it's so easy to get really, really sort of downtrodden and depressed by what's going on, and I want to do the second half of the talk about, what is happening and what we can do positively to actually initiate this change when it comes to food. But to start with, I'm going to talk about something that happened in 2001 in April, and I get rather emotional when I tell this story, and you'll probably see why. I was actually sort of like helping lead a sort of like a group of people and things like that, to go out to farmers who were under threats from the slaughtermen to kill their animals during foot and mouth. And one such an example is a farmer called Steve Phillips, and I got the call as usual at 4 o'clock in the morning. We jumped into the cars and everything like that, got on our mobile phones, got the activists up there, and this was happening on a frequent basis. A lot of people didn't know what was actually going on at the time. And we arrived at this gate at about 5 o'clock in the morning, because what they used to do, they used to come in, the slaughtermen, and try and kill them at dawn, before the solicitors got up. And that was the tried and tested means. So we had to be there, locking arms against the riot police. The army were involved as well. We used to turn up with chainsaws, so we felled trees across the back drives, and we used to put humans in the hedgerows as human shields, because they were shooting the animals from the hip, basically. Steve Phillips was there. His wife had died the day before. Math, in their sort of thoughtful manner, as usual, decided to kill his animals the next day. So he set up, he got all his animals in one field, and he got his sheep and his cattle, a few animals and he got and things. And he saw that was sitting on this great big trailer with an effigy of Tony Blair hanging, with blood going all the way down Tony Blair. And underneath the trailer was a Hessian sack with protrusions in it. Now, we all know what those protrusions were, and anyway, he was there, and he could not go to actually get to the funeral of his wife, because he was worried, whilst it was at his wife's funeral, that Math and the slaughterman would turn up and slaughter his animals. So he stayed there for 2 weeks on that trailer. We were bringing in food and everything like that, and water, and I eventually said to him, I said, Steve, do you really want to be doing this and all the rest of it? And he said to me, Hector, I've only got 2 things dear in my life. I've just lost one of them, and the only other thing I've got is my animals, and I'm not going to lose them. Now, of course, what happened then was the police and the army and things like that, they were absolutely shit scared. They were terrified. And so, basically, he kept his animals. I managed to keep my animals as well. All of us who kept our animals, none of them developed foot and mouth. They were breaking sort of like an EU law, left, right, and centre. But this is important to the foot and mouth, because to me, this was very much an attempt to sort of basically wipe out the small farmers. Look at where foot and mouth happened. It's happened in Devon, in my county. It didn't happen in Cornwall, where you get the big farmers and things like that. It happened in Wales, it happened in Northumberland, and of course, Cumbria as well. These are all the congregations of small farmers. Now, I can't stand conspiracy theories. But why didn't he go to Suffolk? Why didn't he go to Norfolk and Kent and Sussex and all those sort of places? I can't help thinking that is a little bit strange. We know why in here, because they loathe small farmers. They loathe small independent businesses, in whatever field that is. And it was a deliberate effort, I believe, to try and actually sort of wipe out the small farmers. But they didn't succeed. And the great thing is, they didn't succeed because like just a handful of people in different counties and different areas just literally, bloody mightily, went around and helped farmers defend their animals. We also did a lot of demonstrations on the MAF HQ and everything like that. But again, it comes back to the 1%. Now, why I mean the 1% in the farming world is, why didn't they do vaccination? Vaccination is one of the most 99%, it's 99% efficient, it's one of the most effective vaccines in the world. It's an inert vaccine. They were making out as though if you ate vaccinated meat from our meat or whatever, it would kill you. It's an inert vaccine, it just stimulates antibody production. And I actually had a document down which some guy sort of like jumped ship from MAF and let me have. And that's basically there's 51 facts about MAF. And could I get that out of the national papers? No. Again, that showed me the limitations that we actually have as ordinary people to get the truth out in our national papers. So anyway, it's the 1% because basically after the last vaccination, then they could get the export market back within 3 months. And the last cull, it was the export for 3 months. But otherwise, if it had been vaccination, it would have been a year. Now, who does that affect? That affects the 1% of those big farmers with that live trafficking of animals into Europe and things like that, packed into those hideous lorries, going across the channel and things like that. Now, to me, GM is a very, very similar, it's exactly the same, it's a very, very similar bag. I don't know if you know, but I was the one who sort of managed to hop over the fence at Rothamsted, and things like that, caused a minor bit of damage, and I'm in an awful lot of trouble for it, and it's still ongoing and everything like that. I'm now described as a national domestic extremist. They've now, so what they've done is they've amalgamated like ACPO and NECTU and all these other organisations into something called NEDU, the National Domestic Extremist Unit. And that, interestingly enough, is under the guise of the Metropolitan Police, headed by someone called Hogan Howe. So, and that's quite creepy, because there's a grey area. Does that give the Metropolitan Police the rights of these other organisations to do whatever they want to protesters or whoever, beat them up and actually get away with it? I'm no doubt there's going to be more Ian Tomlinson cases coming up, but there is that grey area, possibly giving the Metropolitan Police the ability to do that. I was actually told by my solicitors that I'm probably in the top 5 NDE at the moment. So you know how people like ODs and MDs, I'm going to start signing my name to Christie NDE from now on. Anyway, but on the positive side, what I want to say is when I was going over to Rothamsted, I was just chanced my arm, and I believe in angels, and I just think it's so easy to get bogged down by all the things here. I mean, for example, when I came out to the cover of the woods, it was 300-metre clear fell around the fence. I walked straight up to the CCTV camera. There was security everywhere. They all happened to be at the other side of the fence at the time. And I went backwards and forwards into wood 4 times, visualising an invisible cloak to get a lump of wood big enough to lean up against the fence so I could hop over it. Now, the extraordinary thing is, when I got the report back from a guy called Rana Farouk, the security guy, he happened to leave the security tower at exactly the same time I actually came out from the woods. So he was there. He should have told somebody else, basically, to cover him. But it was quiet. The big demonstration was planned for next weekend, blah, blah, blah. Likewise, when I got this bit of wood, they didn't see me. I leant it up, and I'm not kidding, I jumped up, and I'm not the most athletic person. You couldn't get your fingers in the mesh, it was so tight. And I just lifted, I felt something lift me up. It was effortless. I just flew over that fence. And it was the most extraordinary thing, dropped 12 foot or whatever it was, didn't hurt myself in any shape or form, then thought, how do I get out? Because I thought I was going to be able to get in and everything like that. But anyway, we have got the angels on our side, and I just think it's important to remind ourselves of that. And if we feel drawn to do something, whether it's a direct action or a talk or whatever, just, you can feel it in your heart if it's the right thing, and just do it. If that's what you want to do, and you feel it's right, I would encourage anybody here to do it. Alternatives. I live down at Tapley Park, which is a house in North Devon, and it's run as a community. We had a wonderful Globalised Distance Festival. Quite a few people here actually came down to it quite recently. And one of the best things we have is we've got one of the most established permaculture gardens in the country. I started it many, many years ago, about 22 years ago or something. I had an enormous fight with my ex-wife. We ended up splitting up over it. Well, but anyway, I shouldn't say that. But anyway, so we sort of like had this permaculture design and things like that. And anyway, me and my mate went down to Plants of the Future in Lostwithiel to get a lot of these sort of like perennial plants and things like that that were going to survive, fruit trees and nuts and everything else like that. We planted them in the ground and everything. And anyway, suddenly, one day it came down and there was just aphids everywhere, absolutely carpeted with aphids. And I said, Harry, we're going to have to spray. He goes, no, hold the faith, hold the faith, hold the faith. No, we are going to have to spray. And anyway, I put up with this for about 3 weeks, and there was like hardly anything left on the bottom of the leaves, and I just thought, oh, to hell with it. And I'm ashamed to say, I do hold my hand up. I got up at dawn, I went down to the spray shed, I went down towards the permaculture garden with a knapsack spray on my back, and when I got there, I was met with a sight that was the biggest lesson I've ever had. The whole thing was carpeted with ladybirds, absolutely carpeted with ladybirds. Within 2 days, there wasn't an aphid in sight. Now, permaculture, I believe, I like to be looking out of my bedroom window and just seeing one big permaculture garden all over this country. It's one of the most efficient, effective ways of producing food. You've got 4 layers of food. You've got your tree layer, you know, your plums, your apples and things like that, all right, fairly spread apart. And then you've got your shop layer underneath that, you know, your blackcurrants and your gooseberries, and you have small pockets of them. And for example, with the blackcurrants, you allow the sting nettles to grow up underneath, and that helps keep the blackbirds away. We never have any problems with pests or anything like that. Likewise, you provide overwintering sites for beneficial insects. For example, wasps, hoverflies, and ladybirds eat aphids, so you provide the sites to encourage that. We don't have an aphid problem. The same goes for slugs. This year, as any gardener would know, huge problem with slugs and things like that because it's been so wet. And anyway, we just provide areas like slow worms, grass snakes, and adders and things like that, and we've hardly had any sort of slug problem at all. And so that's, you know, another thing. But how much longer is it? 2 minutes. 2 minutes, right? That's great. The other very important point I want to make is if you are meat eaters, only eat meat from grass-fed cattle. Now that's very, very difficult to get hold of, I know. I was seeing a nutritionist about this yesterday. And it's such rubbish, this sort of like whole grain sort of like scheme of like, sort of like feeding cattle, cake and all the rest of it. For example, according to Graham Harvey, in Graham Harvey's book, there used to be 70 billion bison in the North American prairies. Big agribusiness move in their wisdom, plough half of it up for like sort of like feed and all the rest of it. And basically that housed 50 million cattle. Now they're about the same sort of size. I've got Highland cattle. You know, I've got a low stocking rate, but that low stocking rate means that I haven't got a field of wheat next door and everything like that. And also, I don't put any sort of like fertiliser on the ground. So all the natural herbs are there, medicinal herbs and things like that. I've only had to get them fed out once for a case of New Forest dye. And the farmer next door to me, all his animals have New Forest dye. And that's because we're not looking after our animals properly. Now, I believe this is what we should start campaigning the government for, to come back to that sort of traditional form of like agriculture. What can we do beyond that? I'm going to, whether you like it or not, I'm going to come around with some flyers. It's like a picture of these disgusting GM rats after this, and try and give them as many as you can, and take them out and get them out there. Now, it's a slight exaggeration, Helena was saying a bit earlier, about because a lot of rats end up with tumours. But the thing is, it's the shock effect, and the websites are on the back, and it's to actually try and get people back interested in GM. There's such a small pocket of us who actually do this campaigning, and we need more campaigners. If anybody wants, I've got some GM, sort of like farm to farmer on the table there, and another very good thing is to actually write letters to your enemy. I've just written a letter to Professor Maloney, for example, of Rothamsted Research. Very, very paddy letter asking to have meet up for a drink, have some lunch together, that sort of thing. Explaining why I did what I did and everything like that. Engage with the enemy. You know, that's incredibly important. It's so easy to sort of attack them and sit here, sort of like bitching about them or whatever. But try and engage with the enemy wherever we can. So,
thank you very much.